Penguin Random House Audio presents The Disappearing by Lori Roy. Read for you by Sophie Amoss and Michael Crouch. Chapter 1. Lane. Lane Wallace is alone inside Roland's tavern when the front door flies open. A man stumbles inside, bringing with him a spray of rain that throws a shine on the hickory-brown floors. He scans the dark room, stomps his feet, and draws both hands over his round, wet face. If the man says anything, Lane doesn't hear him, for the rain pounding the tin roof and the palm fronds slapping the front windows. It's supposed to rain through the night, and all around Waddell. People will be keeping a close eye on the river. Lane smiles because maybe the man is a friend of a friend, and not a stranger. She's expecting a big crowd tonight, and one of her regulars might have invited him, but he doesn't smile back. Slipping her phone from her back pocket, she lays it on the bar top where the man will be sure to see it. It's a subtle warning, but if the man is looking for trouble, it'll make him reconsider. He's a little on the heavy side. Doughy, a person might say. From behind the bar, Lane asks the man if a beer'll do him, and as he slides into a booth near the front door, he nods. Her regulars, men who've known her all her life, or rather who have known her father, won't show up for another hour or so. But Roland Jansen will be back any time now. He ran out to move his car and Lane's to the higher and drier ground of the parking lot out front, so she won't be alone with the man for long. Even though it's raining, her regulars will come, because after 20 years, this is the night Lane Wallace becomes Lane Fielding again. They'll come to toast the occasion of her divorce and tell her they never liked that no-good, cheating Kyle, or the 12 novels he's written. These regulars are Lane's only friends here in town. Since moving back to Waddell 6 months ago, a move her divorce demanded after living up north for the last 20 years, she's managed to avoid the friends she had when she was growing up here. To her, they're painful reminders of a past she'd rather forget. Her regulars, men twice her age, have been enough for Lane since moving home. They've even managed to forgive her one indiscretion 3 months ago with Roland, her married boss, or to at least ignore it. She's one of them again now that she's back in town, and they're always telling her it's high time she be proud of Waddell and of the family she was born into. Not one of them believes what they call the hogwash that's been spread about Lane's father by the newspapers and television for the last 5 years. We're glad to have you back, they say instead. Yours is a fine Southern name, passed down by fine Southern gentlemen. No need for any more shame. Damn the newspapers. Damn the state, too. Maybe if the man, this stranger, had sat at the bar like most singles do, Lane wouldn't bother calling Sheriff Mark Ellington. But he didn't. So she grabs her phone and dials. Because she did, after all, make the sheriff a promise. About 10 days ago, a student from Florida State disappeared. Even before the Tallahassee police made their way to Waddell in search of Susanna Bauer, Mark stopped by the bar and made Lane promise to call him if ever she found herself alone with a customer she didn't know. Having 2 daughters to think of, Lane couldn't afford to be careless, and Mark couldn't bear the thought of anything happening to her. That's what he said, but what he meant, and what hung in the air, as it has for more than 20 years, was that he couldn't bear anything happening to her again. This latest girl's disappearance has brought back bad memories for those old enough to remember the late 70s and a man named Ted. Lane was too young to remember when he passed through Waddell, taking with him a 12-year-old girl who was never seen again, but plenty of her customers remember. He ate lunch at Olson's Cafe that day and had a tire patched just down the road from Roland's. Such an ordinary-looking fellow, folks remember. Just as they surely did in 1974, following the disappearance of that young girl. When news of Susanna Bauer's disappearance hit 10 days ago, folks started locking doors, and taking note of out-of-state license plates. With her phone pressed to one ear, Lane leans against the bar and studies the back of the strange man's head. The call to Mark's phone rings a few times, but before it rolls to voicemail, the front door opens again. Much like the first man who stumbled inside, the three men who cross over the threshold bring with them another spray of rain. "Towels are there by the bar," Lane says to the men, and ends the call because 4 strangers are safer than 1. If she's being honest with herself, the strange man had only been an excuse for her to reach out to Mark. He's the only one she's been happy to see again in the months she's been back. And given that he never married, and that he finds reason to stop by the bar more often than necessary, he's seemed happy to have Lane back as well. But since the night she slept with Roland, Mark hasn't been coming around as much. She takes the 3 men for Southerners and whiskey drinkers, and she's right. She hollers to the man sitting at the booth that she'll be right with him, and as she tips a bottle of Woodford over the first tumbler, the ice inside popping and cracking, the men talk among themselves, poke at their cell phones, jot things on small spiral notepads. These 3 aren't tourists, and they aren't locals here for Lane's party. They've been here before, though not these 3 exactly, but one's just like them, and they'll certainly come again. Many years ago, Lane was one of them. But then Kyle's 5th book became a bestseller, and he said to Lane, "Why bother with your career when you have the girls to look after now?" And so she quit. These 3 men are reporters. "Think you fellas should stick to 1 round," Lane says. "Just getting started," the dark-haired one says. Lane grabs a dry towel from the stack and pulls a lawn neck from the cooler. "You're journalists?" "That we are, ma'am." It's the one with silver hair. "How do you know we're reporters?" the smallest one says. "If ever there was a news-weary town, gentlemen," Lane says, walking toward the end of the bar, "this is it. Trust me, you're best off sticking to 1 round." It hadn't taken the Tallahassee police long to make their way to Waddell after Susanna disappeared. The newspapers and television stations were bound to follow, so it's possible these reporters are here to cover Susanna, but not likely. It'll be Lane's father who has brought them to town. Reporters have been coming to cover Neil Fielding's story for at least 5 years, long before Lane returned home. Stories like the one about Lane's father win awards and launch careers. In the beginning, the reporters came only from Florida, but as the story grew, they began driving in from all over the South. From her Brooklyn apartment where she lived with Kyle and the girls for the last 20 years, Lane tracked the reporters' bylines across the country, and within the last 6 months that Lane's been back, they've begun flying in from New York, Illinois, and from as far away as California. With every new development, the details become more shocking, and more reporters come. And the wound here in Waddell so many had hoped would heal has instead festered. It's the rain and thunder that make Lane creep instead of walk toward the man sitting alone at the booth. It's divorce and being on her own for the first time in 20 years. It's her body being softer than when she last lived here, and her blonde hair having faded to a blurry brown. It's living in her parents' house, and hating that she knows which floorboards creak, and which kitchen drawer comes off its track. And it's the music, the soulful, slow notes plucked on an acoustic guitar that float through the speakers overhead, and remind her how many years are lost, and that she's right back where she started. "Here you go," Lane says, setting the beer on the table. The man, new to the bar and having come here on the same day as the reporters, is probably a relative of one of the men her father harmed. As the man reaches for the beer, he turns toward Lane, but not in the sudden way she feared. He turns slowly, his eyes not looking quite at her, but instead at an empty spot over her shoulder.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?